some work in the garden. And I'm going to be snipping bushes, and I'm going to be digging up things and water. We don't have much water. Well, no wonder there's a hole in here. Well, I think I need a fix. Oh well. Okay, let's see. I gotta get my shears. Well, I'll just snip a few things here.
Seriously, shut that off.
Okay, let's see. Whoa, let's see. Oh, I need to do some work back here. The back of the bushes are terrible and underneath. But, oh, before I do, let me take this off. I want to show you something. You didn't think I was working on my birdhouse, but I have been. Every week a little bit more, and I'm just about done. And I just need a little fine tuning. Now, I don't know. How do you think this is big enough for now? No. My neighbor has an owl. Oh well. It just needs, I need some spray paint, a little more Elmer's glue, and oh, maybe some string. You know, birds like string. They do. I don't know what they do with it, but they like it. Maybe they macrame. I don't know. Anyway, this is almost ready. So when it is, I'll show you my final result. So I'll just set this. I kind of work back here. So I'll put it down here on my little table. And pardon me a minute while I snip a few peonies for the bushes. Okay, let's see. I got a peony down here. Oh yeah, here's one. Let's see. Oh, I got to stretch way over here. Oh, I got two more. What? Oh no, I don't believe this. Look, my paper. My paper. Now, what is the paper boy doing under my peony bush? He's very creative, if not early. I was here early this morning. Oh, well, I don't know. I'll have to catch him later. Oh, well, ladies, peony bushes are hard to grow here. But in Ohio, we had many wonderful bushes in our yard. We had this almost pure white, but a little touch of pink peony. I think, I don't know, it was just called pink, I guess. But then we had the ones that were kind of purple and pink, and that was called dusky mauve. Kind of sounds important, doesn't it? But they were beautiful. And I would cut them off from the first peony I saw to the very last one. And I'd put them everywhere in the house because they smelled good, they looked beautiful, and I'd share them with all our neighbors. We really kept those peony bushes bare. But one important thing, here's a tip about peonies. If you cut them and bring them in the house, you need to submerge them in water or run them under a faucet. Otherwise, if you just bring them in and put them in a vase, ants everywhere. Ants love these little blossoms, don't they? Yeah, and we don't love the ants in the house. So remember to submerge your peony bushes. Well, another thing about these marvelous flowers is that they are a bit fragile. Now, they don't really look it because if you can dunk it, it should certainly be strong. But I'll tell you, if you're on the ground and you're snipping those peonies to take in the house, a gust of wind can come right around the corner and you're left holding a pile full of petals. You know, one day you've got a display, a beautiful display of fragrance and color, and the next day you just have a pile of paper-thin colored petals and a barren bush. Here today, gone tomorrow. That kind of reminds me about beauty. You know, not all beauty, but physical beauty. Yeah. You know, one day we were an energetic youth with a peaches and cream complexion. And it seems like we just turned around and all of a sudden we could be a Granny Clampett look-alike. And what about those laugh lines, you know? That's no laughing matter. I mean, I used to think... But now that I have matured, I realize that laugh lines are just simply another road on the map to maturity. And then, here, now this one is really important. Do not, did you hear me? Do not ever look into a 10X mirror. I think someone out there has. I'll tell you, I did once. And I saw the surface of the moon before the space shuttle landed. What is happening? I guess Solomon was right. He said, beauty is fleeting. Right out the door. And ladies, I have a feeling if we put all of our eggs, our flowers in one basket, the beauty basket, I think we're going to be greatly disappointed. Aren't we more than an airbrushed face on the cover of a glamour magazine? Aren't we more than a youthful body with an 18-inch waist? Aren't we more than that? Aren't we more? Yes, we're more. Well, Solomon thought we were too. And he had a wise decision about this dilemma. He says that charm is deceptive. And beauty is fleeting, but the woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Ooh, praise. I like that. Let's see. The woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Well, I guess the choice is up to us. Excuse me. On one hand, we could spend our time trying to be youthful and with no wrinkles. We could be fighting the wrinkle battle all of our life. Or, on the other hand, we could cultivate a fragrant flower with the aroma of a life spent honoring God. Ladies, that choice is yours. And that choice is mine. And I think I choose pennies. Let's pray. These are harder to walk on than I think. Heavenly Father, thank you that no matter what we look like, no matter how well we age, no matter how many wrinkles we have, you know them all. And you know what's under them. You know what's in our heart. Open our hearts now as we listen to your word. In Jesus' name. Amen. You recognize that song? 1965. It was at the top of the charts. Do everything, turn, turn, turn. Do you remember in 1965 who sang that song? The Byrds. The Byrds made that popular. We're going to look today at the lyrics of that song. It's from the book of Ecclesiastes. Turn to chapter 3 in Ecclesiastes. Page 625. Someone realized last week that they must not have had the right Bible because everybody was turning to the right page but them. So if you don't have one of the Bibles, would you raise your hand? You'll get one today. Everybody has one? You got it, Diana? Hold it up. All right. Thank you. Let's look at verse 1 in chapter 3. And I want to really give you this information at the beginning to let you know this is a topical study. When you study the wisdom literature, you're going to be moving around and from Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, a little bit of Psalms sometimes. And so I want you to understand that mainly I will be teaching from chapter 3, but there are times I'm going to give you some references to other scriptures in Ecclesiastes, and Proverbs. If you want to turn to it, great. If you want to just write the reference down, fine. Right there in chapter 3. You can then look at it later, but I'll read it for you. So, but mainly we're going to be staying within chapter 3 of Ecclesiastes. As it says in verse 1, there is a time for everything and a season for every activity under heaven. Notice Solomon uses the phrase under the heavens instead of under the sun. He is emphasizing the whole universe under the rule and reign of God, who is Elohim, the mighty God of wisdom, who exercises sovereign power over all his creation. And in his creation, he has set the boundary of time. You recall in the opening of his speech earlier in chapter 1 of Ecclesiastes, he does say, the sun rises and the sun sets around the clock. Aren't you glad God has not gone on strike? You see, the earth remains forever. Now verse 1, it says, again, there are times and seasons of time. So underline the two key words, time and the word season. Now in chapter 3 here, the verses 2 through 8, Solomon chooses to use the literary term the form of couplets to describe the dash in between the time of birth and death. There are 14 pairs of couplets, and notice that they are opposites. Now what I'm going to do for reading these verses 2 through 8, I'm going to begin to read each verse, and feel free to join in with me out loud as I finish the statement after the word and. All right? And we're going to read through these 14 couplets. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to uproot. A time to kill and a time to heal. A time to tear down and a time to build. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to mourn and a time to dance. A time to scatter stones and a time to gather them. A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to search and a time to give up. A time to keep and a time to throw away. A time to tear and a time to mend. A time to be silent and a time to speak. A time to love and a time to hate. A time for war and a time for peace. Solomon is teaching his listeners that there is a wide range of experiences over time. Can't we all agree? He addresses the matter of time 29 times throughout his speech. What is time? It's a measurable period during which activities occur. Time allows us to do what activity needs to be done. The challenge is realizing what needs to be done and how long to do it. Thank God for calendars and thank God for clocks. I'm watching it like a hawk. Time is not a liability. It's an asset. It's a gift. We're to use our time wisely. Now listen to the words of the psalmist. Psalms 90, you don't have to turn to it, but you want to have it in your reference there. Psalms 90. It happens to be the oldest psalm and composed by Moses in his latter years. This is what in Psalm 90, 10, and 12 is what Moses wrote. Our days may come to 70 years or 80 if our strength endures. Yet the best of them are but trouble and sorrow, for they quickly pass and we fly away. Verse 12. So Lord, teach us to number our days that we may gain a heart of wisdom. My, how time does fly, right? How do we use it? Do we use it wisely? Now, in Solomon's speech here, he does address the matter of time, and especially time management. I'll just read it to you over in chapter 8. He says this, whoever obeys his commands will come to no harm, and the wise heart will know the proper time and procedure.
For there is a proper time and procedure for every matter. That's wise advice. In Proverbs, there are a couple verses about time management. I'll just give it to you. Proverbs 16, verses 3 and 9. Proverbs 16, verses 3 and 9. It instructs us to commit our plans to the Lord, to trust Him, to ask Him for wisdom, to acknowledge Him, and He'll guide your heart to make wise choices. Why? To pace yourself, to balance your schedule. You see, we need to take our cues from the birds. They know about balance. It's important if you want to soar and not go underwater. So seize the day wisely. I shared with you the first lesson about my first time while studying the book of Ecclesiastes with my parents, you see. And I mentioned that my mother's favorite verse was from Ecclesiastes chapter 9, verse 10. Remember, whatever thy hand finds to do it with all thy might. Well, I remember that day when we came to that verse in its context. To my mother's surprise, as we read it, it didn't have a period. There was a comma. And she thought, I didn't know there was more to that verse. And listen to the rest of that verse. Whatever thy hand finds to do it with all thy might, comma. For in the grave where you are going, there is neither working, nor planning, nor knowledge, nor wisdom. Verse 12, moreover, no man knows when his hour will come. As fish are caught in a cruel net, or birds are taken in a snare. That poor pheasant, you see. Talks about dying. Seize the day while there's still time. Thank God for time. There's still time. Because once it passes, what? It's gone. So seize the day, seize the opportunity, make most of your times and seasons of times. I want you to understand this in his words of wisdom, that Solomon addresses the dash, of course, between birth and dying, but he does emphasize throughout his speech, you'll see it here and there, that a wise person should think about dying. You ever think about dying? Mm-hmm. Of course. Now this is why. You might want to turn over to chapter 7, verse 1 and 2 and 4. He's saying in here, in these verses, what we must take to heart. This is why. Verse 1, 2, and 4 of chapter 7. Because a good name is better than fine perfume, and the day of death is better than the day of birth. It is better to go to a house of mourning than go to a house of feasting. For death is the destiny of every man. The living should take this to heart. Verse 4, he says it again. The heart of the wise is in the house of mourning, but the heart of fools is in the house of pleasure. He's saying we should face death. Whether you are a wise person or a fool, death is one thing we cannot prevent, right? When our divine appointment comes, we keep that appointment, don't we? A wise person understands this is a serious matter. But a fool, what? Lives as if there will always be a tomorrow. So take this to heart. And then he says one more thing. A wise person considers her legacy, because a good name is better than fine perfume. Your legacy lingers long after your years. He's saying, take that to heart. That's what you're going to leave behind, is your legacy. That's right. 10 years ago, there was a book that came out entitled The 30-Day Challenge. Remember that? Yeah. In which a pastor challenged his congregation to live as if they had only 1 month to live, 30 days. Now, the question he would have them answer, what would you do to make each day matter? There were 3,500 churches that participated in this challenge. Anybody here in your church, did you do that? Well, I did follow it on the news. And I remember they did give ample coverage of these two women from this church, and one took off a month's leave from her job, and one was a homemaker. For 30 days, they lived as if it was their final 30 days. They faced their own mortality. They set out to live life to the absolute fullest, rather than just existing, because their days were numbered, you see. The interviewer asked them, well, how do you make each day count? What words of wisdom can you share with us? I remember watching that on the news. Both agreed, slow down, enjoy, and notice and cherish the little things. Ignore the things that really do not matter. They said, simplify your life. Get your ducks in a row. And focus on all your relationships. And last but not least, these Christian women said, take a bold stand and reach out to those around who do not know Christ while there's still time. Proverbs says, she who wins souls is wise. Only one life, and soon it will pass. Only what's done for Christ will last. And 1 second into eternity, ladies, what? We will know what really matters in this life. So he talks a lot about time. Talks about time management. He also talks about seasons. We turn back to chapter 3, where we left off, to verse 1. Within the boundary of time, there are times and seasons of time. Within a season, there are activities according to the time of the season, as the song says. There's a time for every purpose under heaven. Summertime brings hurricane season, and wintertime ushers in the new snowbird season, you see. What is he talking about in all of these couplets? He's talking about seasonal thinking. And he uses, as an example, the farmer. Look at verse 9 and 10. What does the worker gain from his toil? I have seen the burden God has laid on man. You see, he's talking in these couplets about specifically the farmer. And we're going to see why I'm saying that. You see, the farmer, as you see in the couplets, understands. This worker understands. There's a time to plant, a time to uproot, a time to scatter the stones, a time to gather them, a time to clear the land, to keep and throw away, like a yard sale, you see. And there is a season for every activity under heaven, the work of a farmer. And the farmer's wife says, you're working too hard, dear. You know, there's a time to laugh. There's a time to dance. There's a time to love. There's a time to embrace. And there's a time to speak. We got to talk about this. You see? And the farmer's neighbor says, well, it's a time for us to make peace, you see, and reconcile our differences. I'm tired of war. Let's make peace. It's not too late, the song says. You see, a farmer is a seasonal thinker. 4 years we lived in the heartland of America. We were in Indiana at Grissom Air Force Base. And that Air Force Base, I'm telling you, they built it smack in the middle of a huge cornfield. It was the corn belt, you see. I could see it all around the perimeter was the corn growing. And I observed about the growing process and the changing seasons. Springtime is for planting, and summertime is for growth and maturing. Autumn was for reaping the harvest, and wintertime had its purpose too, as the ground rested dormant. We enjoyed the fruit of their labor. They enjoyed the fruit of their labor, but the women were busy. They were canning the vegetables and the fruit. And the men, they were tuning up the equipment for the next season, you see. And I want you to see a farmer is a seasonal thinker. A wise farmer cooperates with each season and makes the most of every season. They understand every season has a purpose for an activity under heaven, whether sowing or reaping. Some are more laborsome. Some seasons are more enjoyable. Within a season, there are times that we laugh and we weep, but boy, we'd rather dance than mourn. Even within a season of time, there can be good times and bad times. There can be good hours of the day. There can be tough hours of the day and tough hours through the night that are not so good in these seasons. But Solomon reminds everyone in verse 11, what does he say? He has made everything beautiful in its time. There's words of wisdom here, ladies. He has made everything beautiful in its time. Who has? God has. I want you to see here. The hand of God is in every season of your life. Can you trust him for whatever season you are in? Solomon's father David, in a time of season, he was homebound in a cave. And in that time, he wrote a song, and he prayed and cried out to God. God, I trust you. My times are in your hands. In that season of his life. There's never an easy way to go through tough times, but there's a right way. So be anxious for nothing, but with prayer and thanksgiving, make your requests known. You see, be anxious and take those captive thoughts, those anxious thoughts that fly, fear flies, worry flies, you see, take captive and anchor them in prayer and trust and pray and thank him and sing if you can sing. Find a song and find contentment in this season. God answers prayer, doesn't he? He does make everything beautiful in its time, and what truly is beautiful are the beautiful ladies that he sends your way, the beautiful medical staff, the beautiful way he worked out the timing of things, the beautiful provision that you needed, and the beautiful testimony of God's faithfulness. Amen? Amen. I want you to turn to Psalms 91. I read that the first week. Psalms 91. I'm going to show you what God showed me. Psalms 91, verses 1 through 4, page 561. I want you to know the God-fearing woman who abides under his wings. She finds strength in his presence, abiding under his wings. Listen. He who dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, he is my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. Verse 4. He will cover you with his feathers, and under his wings you will find refuge. His faithfulness, his faithfulness, his faithfulness will be your shield and rampart. I want you to envision this beautiful picture. Yes, we know under his wings he enfolds us with his love. But envision what the psalmist saw. Under his wings is my place of refuge. As I continually abide with him, you see, he is ever present with me. And he encircles me like a wall, like a fortress. He's my rampart. That's what that means. As you cling to him by faith, he will fortify you. His presence will make you stronger and give you strength. The psalmist declared in this passage, because God is faithful, his faithfulness will be like a rampart. He will strengthen you for whatever the season as you abide under his wings. You see, this is what sets a God-fearing woman apart. She exercises her faith, trusting in the Lord with all her heart. and she's at peace with God. Oh, she's already made peace with God. She's his child. But she's at peace with God under his wings. Turn to Ecclesiastes chapter 7, verse 10 and 14. Speaking to the God-fearing woman. Ecclesiastes chapter 7, verse 10 and 14. He says, because she's made peace with God. Do not say, why were the old days better than these? For it's not wise to ask such questions. Verse 14. When times are good, be happy. But when times are bad, consider God has made the one as well as the other. Therefore, a man cannot discover anything about the future. Isn't that a beautiful passage? In his times, he makes all things. God has a purpose, and the purpose is always good. The season of time may not seem beautiful to you now, but keep trusting him. Dare not ignore the seasons and fail to cultivate spiritual growth according to his timetable. God is more interested in your character than in your comfort. God is faithful, and something beautiful will come forth from this season and within this season of time, because sometimes seasons last for a lifetime. I want you to understand, seasons change, but God, he never changes. God is faithful, isn't he? So I ask you to consider the eagle. Can anything good come out of my season? Proverbs 30, Agar wrote, in fact, Solomon included some of his sayings into the book of Proverbs, and he said, there's something too wonderful for me to see is that eagle up in the sky. Well, I'll never look at an eagle the same way again, will you? When you hear this, I was driving down the highway and I had the radio on, Focus on the Family at the time, and Anne Graham Lotz was being interviewed, and she talked about the eagle, and she said this, will you soar like an eagle or will you walk like a turkey? That caught my attention. I pulled the car right out to the side and I got out my pencil and I started taking notes. She says, when a storm comes, a turkey runs to the barn, but not an eagle. It embraces the force of the wind and it comes against it and spreads its wings to create an uplift, and it soars. Well, gee, I got the picture of that. Be like an eagle and just rise above whatever and soar. That is, if the eagle survives the molting season. For them, it's a devastating blow. I knew birds go through a molting season. I used to clean our bird cage, my little Tweety, you know. I'd see the feathers all the time, but Tweety could still fly. I had to make sure I shut the cage. And I know that there are other birds that once a year, they go through a molting season. It's not as gradual. And they lose all their favorite feathers, and for just about a month, they're on the ground looking for their food. But not so with an eagle, you see. I listened and I took notes as she described the molting season of an eagle. She said, when their life is half over, they go through a time of crisis. Most of their feathers drop off. I'm not talking about the bald eagle here. Most of their feathers. they can't even fly. You see that? How devastating. They have to walk around the valley like a turkey. During that season, not only that, their vision weakens, their body weakens because they lose their appetites. And this wilderness experience lasts 40 days and 40 nights. And in the valley, they find an area where the sun can shine down directly on them. They find a rock to crawl up on, and they lay on the rock, and they proceed to finish plucking out the rest of the few feathers that remain. And they lie there bare. I wonder if they're thinking, there must be a reason why I'm still here. You see. Now they lay there at the mercy of other eagles that fly overhead to drop for them fresh meat. You see. And to protect them from the predators. Isn't that beautiful? God sent them girlfriends. You see. Some eagles will eat and recover, and others will just roll over and die, depending on their attitude and attitude will determine your altitude. For the eagle that cooperates with this amazing process of restoration, it will be like a rebirth for them. They can once take their place again in the heavens, able to soar with more vitality than ever. And the prophet Isaiah, he declared, and you know it, they who wait upon the Lord, say it, shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. So place your hope and place your strength and your trust in him, and he will renew your strength to rise above and soar mighty in spirit. Do not pray for easy lives, but pray to be stronger. A God-fearing woman knows, and she's assured, that whatever the season, it's always the season to trust him, abiding under his wings. And sometimes his power is displayed by his miraculous deliverance. And sometimes his power is displayed by the grace that he gives you to endure. And some of you are thinking right now, my season will never change. He will give you the grace. He has given you the grace. You will endure. He is making everything beautiful. By his presence, he'll give you, and by his word. I ask you to find a scripture for whatever season you are in. Because you know, one sentence of truth can change a person's whole attitude. And it can affect changes in your moment, in your day, in your month, and in the years. I want us to understand this about Solomon, the speaker. He was a changed man when he spoke that day. We know from his biography, from the book of 1 Kings, that he had come through a season when he became a pleasure-seeking fool, and he had placed God aside for a while. But it's evident by his speech. I showed you later last week that he humbled himself, didn't he? And he purposed in his heart to teach godly wisdom that he gained through those experiences and through the mistakes that he made. You see, he speaks as an older, wiser king, and he said, I'm going to redeem the time. It was a new season for him. And at the time of this speech, at the end of his reign, he is now in his golden years. The golden years. And he glowed. I bet he glowed. You could tell by his countenance, I bet. Let me read for you a verse from Ecclesiastes chapter 8. It says, who is like the wise man? Who knows the explanation of things? A person's wisdom brightens their face and changes its hard appearance. I believe he glowed in his golden years. He had a change of heart, and the most beautiful thing, he was changed for the better. He was never the same again. Something good comes out of that season of your life. I ask the question again. Can anything good come out of your season? Like Solomon. Turn back to chapter 3, where we left off, verse 11. Like Solomon, he was never the same. He said, he has made everything beautiful in its time. Verse 11. He has also set eternity in the hearts of men. Yet they cannot fathom what God has done from beginning to end. You see, your time on earth will end. So he's saying, keep an eternal perspective. You may never have full discovery and know the reason for your season this side of heaven, but cling to an eternal perspective. It will help you. Haven't you experienced that through the tough times they have a way of putting everything into its proper perspective? what we have to look forward to. It helps us in the present to think about what's to come. And what we experience in the present, doesn't it make you homesick for heaven? We have a future, we have a hope, and our circumstances may never change, but an eternal perspective, it will change everything. You see, I have a future and I have a hope. Remember this, for every Christian, it is never the end of the world. We do not live under the sun. We live under heaven. We were made for eternity. For the Christian, the best is yet to come. And St. Francis said it, it is in dying that we live. And you have this promise, for God so loved the world. What? That he gave his only begotten Son. Whoever believes in him should not perish but have what? Everlasting life. You see, we must settle that question and make peace with God and live life to the fullest. And that's what he has there, verse 14 and 13, verse 12 and 13 of that chapter. Live life to the fullest, he says. I know that there's nothing better for men than to be happy and to do good while they live. That everyone may eat and drink and find satisfaction in all his toil. This is the gift of God. I know that everything God does will endure forever. Nothing can be added to it and nothing taken from it. God does it so that men will revere him. Have you found satisfaction in life? Is God worthy of our praise? Do you revere him? The one who continues to sit on the throne that encircles this earth and the changes. God doesn't change not. God is faithful. And as the hymnist wrote, summer and winter, what? Springtime and harvest. Sun, moon, and stars in their courses above. Join with all nature in manifold witness to thy great mercy and faithfulness and love. Isn't God an awesome God? Now look at the end of that chapter, verse 18, just briefly, and I won't take the time to read all of it. But Solomon, talking about eternity, he attempts to answer a question that is on so many people's minds. Here it is. Will I see my pet in heaven? Now, he has an answer, in a way, for all you animal lovers. All right? So look at verses 18 through 21, and I'll just kind of skim through it. He says, oh, I also thought, as for men, God tests them so that they may see that they are like the animals. You know, man's fate is like that of the animals. The same fate awaits them both. One dies, the other dies. All have the same breath. Man has no advantage over the animal. Everything is meaningless. They all go to the same place. Well, he's talking about where? Back to the dust. To dust we return. But the question of the spirit, he says, who knows if the spirit of man rises upward and if the spirit of the animal goes down to the earth? Well, in that time, they knew there was an afterlife. They knew there was an eternity. And we know from the psalmist that they knew the spirit did go to heaven. But they didn't know about all the things that we know about heaven because they don't have the New Testament like we do, and the visions and the future to come. But Solomon is saying here, to answer that question, will my pet be in heaven? He says, your guess is as good as mine. The wisest of the wise does not have all the answers. He's not God, you see? He does understand that animals have this common with mankind about dying and all that, but he doesn't know nothing about the spirit, what's going to happen. But I do have this verse for you animal lovers. It's in Proverbs, write down this verse. Proverbs 12:10 for you animal lovers. Do you know what that verse is? What is it, Elisha?
If that's what I'm thinking of, it's in the same way God cares for
That's
the animal.
the righteous care for the needs of their animals. You see, that pleases the Lord that you care for the needs of your animals. But the kindest acts of the wicked are cruel. Cruelty to animals. Isn't that interesting? Proverbs 12:10. So it pleases the Lord that you are an animal lover. You see, whether it is a cat or a dog or a rabbit or a hamster. I love hamsters. Renee wrote, you were writing a book about a hamster. Is it finished yet?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you gonna publish it? Okay. She's got some other neat books that she's written. You've got to see them. But anyway, I love hamsters, and so God cares about our animals. And so I want to say this. I can promise you this. You're not going to be disappointed in heaven either way, right? We have a lot to look forward to. All right, let's turn over in closing to chapter 12 about aging. It's the final chapter of Solomon's life and the final chapter of his book here. And he describes the process of aging, and we compare the cycles of a lifetime to seasons. And we know seasons, the spring is a time for new beginnings, and we associate spring with our birth, you recall. Well, Solomon, he is no spring chicken, right? He is 60-ish, and that's like, back then, that's like 80-ish now. He's slowing down because it takes him twice as long to do half as much, right? Well, we do know this about aging. Our genes affect it. Our lifestyle affects it, and disease can all affect the rate of aging. So for some others, time flies more than others. Now, in chapter 12, he says, verse 1, remember your Creator in the days of your youth, before the days of trouble come and the years approach, when you will say, I find no pleasure in them. He wished he could talk to the young people of that time and tell them, you know, enjoy is going to fly, and there'll be a time, like this lady in our church, she turned to be 102. She said, Winifred Egger said, I don't wish this on anybody. You see? They found no pleasure in them because we call the declining years, men call it the reclining years. Now we call it the golden age, don't we? But I want to just quickly read through this because I want you to do this week. Look at the verses through 12. And what he does, you know, he goes with pairs, he paints this beautiful poetic picture of aging to describe the physical decline over time, or we say becoming chronologically challenged. All right. Now, verses 2 through 5, I'm just going to tell you the parts of the body as we read through it, okay? Verse 2 through 5, he's talking about, you see, the physical decline. Before the sun and the light, and the moon and the stars grow dark, and the clouds return from the rain. Verse 3, when the keepers of the house tremble, that's your arms, and the strong men stoop, that's your bones, that's your skeleton, degeneration. When the grinders cease, the teeth, because they are few, and those looking through the windows, your eyes grow dim. When the doors, or your ears and hearing to the street are closed, and the sound of the grinding fades, and men rise up at the sound of birds, but all their songs grow faint. When men are afraid of heights, fears of falling, and of dangers in the street, just fear in general. When the almond tree blossoms, that's the white hair, and the grasshopper drags himself along, that's moving slowly, and desires no longer is stirred, you lose interest in things, then the man goes to his eternal home, and mourners go about the streets. You see? So read through that again. See if you can remember those parts as you talk about it. And then in the last few verses, 6 through 8, he's saying this. He's talking of using metaphors. And notice how valuable these metaphors are, but how fragile man is. So he uses that in explaining how perishable our body is. Remember him before the silver cord is severed, or the golden bowl is broken, before the pitcher is shattered at the spring, or the wheel broken at the well, and the dust returns to the ground it came from, and the spirit returns to God who gave it. Meaningless, meaningless, said the teacher. Everything is meaningless. Someone said growing old is not for sissies, is it? would be a man most miserable. And you remember in his search for life under the sun without God, he became miserable. He even came to hate life, we see. But you'll see the transformation of him as he speaks and presents throughout his chapters. But he's saying here, you see, the aging of this mortal body is not a disease, is it? It's a natural process between birth and death. We have no choice, but we can choose how to respond to the process because, like the eagle, it's an attitude. Cecil Murphy wrote, "Aging is an attitude." One elderly woman responded, "These are not the happiest years of my life, but I'm still content." In his findings, he observed that this attitude, that those who accept that nothing is perfect, they are easy to accept the way things are, you see. The author came to this conclusion. He wrote, "I believe God compensates for the physical decline by increasing our appreciation of the journey with the content of where we are now and where we are going." So seasoned saints, we can embrace this season, any season of our lives. So life is not for the birds. Look at it this way. Regardless of whether you've been recently hatched or you're soon to be dispatched, why not enjoy life to the fullest, abiding under his wings with joy? I'm going to give you the last proverb. Proverbs 10, verse 27. The God-fearing woman knows this. Proverbs 10:27. The fear of the Lord adds length to life, but the years of the wicked are cut short. That's not an ironclad promise. That's a generalization. Because if you read through Ecclesiastes and Solomon's words, he's agitated at times because he sees the way the unrighteous live and how cut short the life is sometimes of the righteous person. It's not an ironclad promise, you see. But generally speaking, we know that unhealthy choices and risky behaviors can shorten one's life even up to 12 years, according to a British survey. But Solomon comes to make peace with this because he's greatly perturbed about it. And let me read what he wrote in Ecclesiastes chapter 8. This is what he said. I'll just read it. 8:12. Although a wicked man commits 100 crimes and still lives a long time, I know that it will go better with God-fearing men and women who are reverent before God. Yet because the wicked do not fear God, it will not go well with them, and their days will not lengthen like a shadow. He concludes here, it's ultimately not the length of one's life, but the quality of it. A God-fearing woman finds satisfaction in life because obedience to God's word can add years to your life and life to your years. It's not the days of your life, it's the life in your years, you see. So the message is clear throughout Proverbs. The message is clear in our theme verse from Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Would you say it with me? Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your path straight. I want to say this to you. The path you choose determines not only your destiny, but your quality of life. That's what our theme verse says. But I also want you to understand this perspective from the theme verse. God desires to lead you along right paths that are right for you as you commit to Him. Never forget, in this passage, trusting in the Lord, I'm affirming I belong to Him. That God has a plan for my life. And that His plan is the best for me. He will direct us in paths we may not have chosen. But He always desires we move forward, abiding under His wings. I close with this. For the past 10 years, our chapel's lady ministry, we host an annual birthday bash. We go to a local restaurant in August and we bring a cake and we celebrate everybody's birthday, and we especially honor those who are 90 and above. I think they deserve that. Well, as we wait for our food, you see, we stir up some conversation and with like a little icebreaker, and we go around the circle. Well, one time we asked the ladies to share their most memorable birthday. Well, we give everybody an opportunity as we go around the table, and a lot of laughter going on, this and well, it was Hetty's turn. Hetty, does that sound familiar? Our owl. Hetty, it was her turn. Most of you know her by now, and she and Brenda are our hostesses, and they've been part of our team since the beginning, 13 years ago. Faithful as our hostesses. Well, it was Hetty's turn to share. She caught us off guard. She had a more serious expression on her face as she revealed the most memorable birthday. It was her 40th. She said, on that day, I was lying in a bed in a New York hospital, all prepped for surgery. She said, my body was shaven from the top of my head to just above my ankles. She said I had a brain tumor. But it was benign. But thinking back, I thought 40 years ago, any brain surgery was risky. Your life hung in the balance, and who knows the after effects after such a surgery. She realized it. She realized what could happen following a delicate surgery like this. Well, of course, at our big celebration that day, there wasn't much discussion. We were just glad that she was with us, that she had celebrated many, 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 many birthdays, and that we could celebrate it with her, you see. That was just the extent of that day, but not me. On another day, I took her aside. I said, Hetty, can you share more about that season of your life? She revealed that at that time of her life, she was divorced. She was raising 4 teenagers. 2 were in college and 2 were in high school. Imagine a single mom with 4 dependents, and they were all depending on their mother. She said, I made careful preparation for that time. She said, I had all my ducks in a row, and she said, I did feel optimistic, but I knew I could live through the surgery, but I had no idea what I might face afterwards. I said, Hetty, what was going through your mind? She said, of course I thought about dying, but my greatest desire was that with or without me, I wanted my children to live successful lives. She said, when that crossed my mind, my faith rose up, and I said, I'm determined. I have got to make it. Lord, my life is in your hands. I want you to know she experienced no complications. Hetty shared with me that it was because of that season of her life, it is making her stronger in this season of her life, and that this summer she faced hip surgery. She said, I trusted the Lord then, I trusted Him now, and God has been faithful. You see, He's made everything beautiful in its time. Hetty lives a full and a satisfied life. She never slows down. and she's always on time. And I mean this, she soars into a room, whether we're having a board meeting, she could be coming from her garden, working for hours, she comes running into the board meeting and she's on time, soaring. Or whether she is here cutting a path from that table to that table and back, year after year, you see. And you know she ran marathons as well. You know this, when I see Hetty, I can't help but think, the eagle has landed. Listen, let's stand as Angela sings this beautiful, beautiful song, The Eagle's Wings. We dedicate this to you, Hetty. Thank God for his faithfulness.
And God will raise you up on eagle's wings. There you are, the breath of dawn. Make you to shine like the sun, and hold you in the palm of his hand.
Right, chord together. I think we know that.
And God will raise you up on eagle's wings. There you are, the breath of dawn. Make you to shine like the sun, and hold you in the palm of his hand.
Thank you, Lord, for that promise. Thank you, Lord. We claim that. We claim that this morning, Father. As we go forth, you know what we step from and into when we leave this place. We thank you, Lord, that we can ever abide under your wings. And it's in your presence that we will find strength, that you will renew our strength like the eagles. We thank you, Lord Jesus. Go with us now in your name. Amen.